Hello and welcome to pnclounge.com. Today we are discussing the manage stakeholder engagement process. So this process of course is a part of stakeholder management knowledge area. As always, if you are into reading articles, the first link in the description below is going to take you to a relevant article on this topic over at our official website pnclounge.com. So check the first link out. Second link is going to be a YouTube playlist of every single video that we have done in the stakeholder management knowledge area. Also, third link is going to be a playlist of all your FAQs that we have answered regarding stakeholder management knowledge area. So three important links, just wanted to remind you about them like I always do. Anyways, let's get started. So first of all, like I said, this is a process in stakeholder management knowledge area, but this is the only process in the executing process group. Here is the PGKA mapping. So this is the process that we are talking about today, manage stakeholder engagement. This falls in the executing process group. The knowledge area, of course, is stakeholder management knowledge area. So this is the process we are talking about. We've already discussed the previous ones. The second link in the description, that playlist will contain all those videos. Okay, so let's try to understand this process. Manage stakeholder engagement process. First of all, the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs of this process aren't something that you don't already know of. You already know them. Why? Because stakeholder management knowledge area is the last knowledge area in the PMP courseware. So by now you would have seen all the concepts that you are going to see listed under the ITTOs of manage stakeholder engagement. In fact, a good thing to do here would be to try to list out what do you need as inputs, what are the tools and techniques that you need to employ to be able to generate certain output that belong to the manage stakeholder engagement process. But in order to do so, you should also know what this process is all about. What does this process do? So this is a good overview of what this process does. Remember, this process is part of the executing process group. That means you are doing the actual work here. And the actual work is all about communicating and working with stakeholders to make sure of these three things. You need to meet the demands and needs and expectations of the stakeholders. So in the previous processes of stakeholder management knowledge area, you've already know what their needs and expectations are, right? So you've already found that out. You already know now what the needs and expectations of the stakeholders are. So in this process, you are making sure that you meet those needs and expectations. You need to address any issues of the stakeholders if they arise, and you need to nurture their involvement. You need to make sure that they are involved in the project. So these are the three basic things that you would do as part of this process. Now, this process allows the project manager to increase support and minimize resistance from stakeholders. Now raise your hands. Who does not want increased support and minimal resistance from the stakeholders? I don't see any hands because all of us want that. All of us want our stakeholders to be more supportive and less resistive, right? So this process is going to allow you to do so. So that is why this process is extremely important. Another important point here as part of this process is to make sure that no misunderstandings whatsoever develop between you and your stakeholders or amongst the stakeholders as well, right? So as your project progresses, as you move from requirement definition to design, from design to development, right? As you navigate through all these processes, all these phases of the project, you need to make sure that the stakeholders are aligned. There's no misunderstandings amongst them. There's no misunderstanding between you and them, right? So that is what this process is all about. You are managing the engagement that you have with your stakeholders. So obviously this means that this process is performed throughout the project. So there's no such defined time where you're going to sit and say, okay, today I'm going to manage stakeholder engagement. It doesn't work like that. You are managing your engagement with stakeholders throughout the project, right? There is no specific time, there is no specific milestone where you manage stakeholder engagement. And it is quite obvious, right? Misunderstandings can happen at any time, right? So you need to make sure that you are performing this process throughout the life of your project. A quick reminder, all our PMP courseware, articles and videos, everything is available here, pmclounge.com/PMP training. Everything is free. Check it out. Okay, so let's talk about the three things that you need to do to ensure that misunderstandings do not develop between you and the stakeholders. Number one is all stakeholders should be taking part in project decision making. So we have said this earlier. I'd like to repeat it here. Projects are not your autocratic playground. You need to make sure that every stakeholder feels like they are participating in the decision making. Any large project decision, any big project decision that is taken should have all stakeholders or at least as many stakeholders involved as possible. Stakeholders should not feel that they have been ignored while this decision was being taken. So make sure stakeholders are taking part in your project decision making. Number two, understand the reasons if a stakeholder is resistant and negotiate accordingly. So all of us are going to have certain stakeholders that are going to be resistant or negative as part of your project. So just because someone is resistant or just because someone is negative towards your project should not give you the license to not understand their reasons and just ignore them. You should not do that. You need to understand the reasons. Why is someone resistant? Is this an issue of the people? Is this an issue with the process? Is this an issue with something else? You need to understand the reason for someone being resistant to your project or someone that you think is negative towards your project. So understand the reasons. Do not ignore someone just because you think they are resistant towards your project or negative towards your project. Now, once you understand the reasons, the next part is to negotiate with them accordingly. Now, negotiation is also something that we have talked about earlier. Negotiation means making sure that you create a win-win scenario. So you understand their reasons why they behave in a certain way, and then you need to negotiate with them. That means then you need to create a win-win scenario so that these stakeholders feel more comfortable and possibly turn from resistant stakeholders to supportive stakeholders. Finally, take suggestions from all stakeholders for consideration, even those that are resistant. Now, this point is actually an extension to point number one, where we said that all stakeholders should participate in project decision making. Similarly, you need to take suggestions of all stakeholders for consideration, even those that are resistant. So if you take suggestions from everyone, right, and then you consider those suggestions, that means you take another step, maybe discuss those suggestions in a team meeting, take those suggestions up seriously and try to see if you can implement those suggestions. These suggestions can even come from resistant stakeholders, so you should not play favorites. Even if there is someone who is a resistant stakeholder, who you consider someone as a negative stakeholder for your project, you should seek their suggestions and you should take their suggestions up for consideration. You should not ignore them. And God knows, if you do this, if you take their suggestions for consideration, maybe just because of this effort that you have put in, they become less resistant, right? They become more of a supportive stakeholder for you rather than being a resistant stakeholder. Anything is possible, right? So these are the three steps that you need to take to make sure that misunderstandings between you and the stakeholders do not develop. Finally, the key to success in managing stakeholder engagement is being inclusive. Inclusive, that's the key word here. That's the word you're looking for. So you have to be inclusive and you need to be sharing information with everyone who's impacted by the project, who considers themselves impacted by the project, right? So you need to make sure that you are transparent, you are sharing as much information as possible, and you are also being inclusive whenever it comes to taking decisions, whenever it comes to inviting suggestions, whenever it comes to whatever that's happening as part of your project. So that's the key of managing stakeholder engagement. So finally, here's the question for this video. Do you have any ideas for managing stakeholder engagement? How do you manage stakeholders engagement? Now, this is a question you will not find in your PMP exam. The answer to this question is something you're not going to find in your PMBOK guide, in your Rita Mulgay book. No, sir. This is a question, the answer to which needs to come from your real life project management experience. And that is why I really love questions like these. And I really love looking forward to answers from you on questions like these, because these are the questions that are ultimately going to make us grow in our careers in the field of project management. So let me know in the comments any of your real life project management examples, experiences of how you managed stakeholder engagement. Definitely looking forward to your answers. And that's all that we had in this video. Smash that like button if you got value out of it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified whenever we upload new content. Also, don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP resource. Thank you and have a nice day.